All right, I think we have everyone here. We'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Breaking the Mold Without Breaking the Bank, Transforming the Teaching Job to Address Persistent Shortages. I am Ishay Collins, Director of the Equity Assistance Center South here at the Southern Education Foundation, and I am joined today by my colleagues, Jasmine Walker, Director of District Engagement for Outcomes-Based Contracting at Southern Education Foundation, and Tara Anderson, Director at Education Resource Strategies. You are all in for a real treat today. Today's webinar is very interactive and features a breakout session. Our time together will focus on strategies for reimagining teaching roles and consider the trade-offs to address for maximum impact and long-term sustainability. But before we dive in, I would like to elevate a few housekeeping rules. Please keep yourself on mute and please feel free to utilize the chat feature to ask any questions you may have. Next slide. Before we begin, I'd like to provide a little more information about the Equity Assistance Center South. We are one of the 4 Equity Assistance Centers in the nation, funded by the United States Department of Education, which serves our public education systems by addressing issues of equity. We advise, assist, and serve public schools and districts in their work to provide more equitable opportunities for students in the areas of race, national origin, sex, and religion as required by law. We serve Region 2, which support 11 states: Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Virginia, and the District of Columbia. We provide a range of technical assistance and training to school districts and agencies in that region by request and at no cost. Again, I'm going to say that is at no cost to you. And so, what are the services we provide? We provide 3 tiers of technical assistance. First, and those tiers are universal, targeted, and intensive technical assistance and training. Our universal TA covers broad issues of race, national origin, sex, and religion. Webinars like this one serves as an example of the type of universal technical assistance we offer. Next, our targeted technical assistant is just that, it's targeted. We support districts and agencies on a single topic or area. This tier of technical assistance could be customized training or professional learning communities. And our final tier is intensive technical assistance, in which we work with an individual school or district on a specific topic or issue impacting that district or agency. And again, these tiers of technical assistance are by request and also provided at no cost to districts and agencies. And so finally, how do you request our services? If you would like to inquire about our services and see how the Equity Assistance Center South can help your district, please visit us at www.exsouth.org and select the blue button that says Submit Request. From there, it will take you to this form where we would like for you to share a little more information about your district. So please feel free to share the problem you're experiencing, your current efforts, and any anticipated impact you would like to have. Once we receive your form, we will be in touch. We will be in touch with you to schedule a time to meet. If you need any additional help or just would like to simply reach out to us with any questions, please feel free to send an email to us at exsouth at southern.education.org, and we will put that information in the chat. We look forward to the opportunity to assist you. And so now I will turn it over to my colleague, Jasmine Walker, with outcome-based contracting here at the Southern Education Foundation.
Thanks, Ishay. Another strategic initiative at the Southern Education Foundation is outcomes-based contracting. So what is outcomes-based contracting? Outcomes-based contracting requires that a substantial part of payment to a service provider is contingent on meeting agreed upon student outcomes. OBC acts as a kind of guarantee that public dollars are actually tied and deliver academic impact. And lastly, it requires that districts and vendors identify and commit to clearly defined outcomes, and providers are incentivized for that quality and innovation that it takes in service to those outcomes. OBC empowers districts to contract for mutual accountability and to be clear about the student outcomes they expect. So what does OBC or outcomes-based contracting require? It requires a shift in mindset from how much does it cost to how much is it worth. We like to say we don't buy services, we buy outcomes. So let's take a look at the comparison between traditional contracting and outcomes-based contracting. Traditional contracting requires payments being tied to inputs and outputs, where there's a fixed price and payments are based on cost, student enrollments, and or student completions of a program. Whereas in outcomes-based contracting, payments are tied to just that, outcomes. Providers receive some guaranteed portion of funding, which we like to call a base payment, and a portion of the funding is contingent on the achievement of those agreed upon student outcomes. Under traditional contracting, districts assume all the risk, meaning that the district is going to pay for services regardless of those results. And in outcomes-based contracting, the risk is shared. This is where the mutual accountability piece comes in. Districts don't pay the full amount if desired and agreed upon student results are not achieved. In a traditional contract, price is based on cost. The contract price is driven by the provider cost and the margin or profit. Whereas in an outcomes-based contract, the price is set by the district. It's driven by their willingness to pay. And then in traditional contracting, all results are valued equally, meaning the value of the contract is based on cost regardless of outcomes achievement. Whereas in outcomes-based contracting, there's an opportunity to incentivize the results, meaning each outcome is weighted differently, building in an upside or a bonus payment for the provider taking on more risk and responsibility. So where did our work of OBC begin? OBC grew out a one-year planning and feasibility project at the Center for Education Policy Research at Harvard. Since then, we launched our first cohort in fall of 2021, which now includes 13 districts across the country. We are heavily funded by philanthropy by Walton, Schmidt, Gates, America Achieves, Accelerate, and Schusterman. OBC has three goals. One being to spur innovation and instructional innovations that directly impact student outcomes, specifically for students of color and those in low-income families. We also want to put pressure on the current price of instructional interventions, ensuring sustainability of funding streams, especially since we're at the time of the ESSER funding cliff. We also want to ensure that we're shifting relationships between school districts and vendors to one of partnership, therefore advancing equitable education practices. To learn more about OBC and to view our resources, please be sure to check out our website, and we're dropping a link for you in the chat. At this time, I'm going to hand it over to Tara Anderson with Education Resource Strategies to tell us more about how we can rethink the teaching roles.
Oh, sorry, I'm on mute. Thanks, Jasmine. It's great to be with you all today. So here's just a glance at our agenda for how we'll spend the rest of our time together. I'm going to talk for just a few minutes and then about just the challenge of what it means to sustainably restructure teaching roles, what are the cost drivers and factors that really shape the cost and structure of teaching roles. But then we're going to get into breakout groups to play a game that we call Teaching Job Hold'em, where you'll interact with each other to really kind of go through this exercise of seeing how a district could reorganize their people, time, and money to create a more effective, compelling, affordable structure for teaching roles. And then we'll just spend a couple minutes debriefing that exercise and closing out. So, Education Resource Strategies is a national nonprofit. We're based in the Boston area, but we work with school systems across the country to transform the ways that they use resources, structures, and practices so that all students, particularly those who are furthest from opportunity and those with the greatest learning needs, attend a school where they can learn and thrive. So I'm going to start by talking about what a lot of folks, us included, are characterizing as a crisis right now of the teaching role. And I imagine that much of this is familiar to you all in the context where you're working. So at the start, we see a world in which there are collaborative workspaces, increasing diversity of experiences, needs, goals, rising wages in other industries, and career pathways that enable people to accelerate their own growth and impact. Whereas in teaching, we continue to see a one-size-fits-all role, regardless of individual strengths and experiences. Teachers have limited time for meaningful collaboration with enough support from content experts. Pay, in a lot of cases, has stagnated and is not competitive with other opportunities. And career advancement really requires leaving the classroom and moving further away from students. So as a result, across so many districts and schools in the country, particularly those that serve students of color and students experiencing poverty, we see high rates of burnout, teacher turnover, especially among early career teachers and in our highest need schools, leading to persistent shortages in harder to staff roles like special ed and science and technology. And as a result, just a strained capacity to work in crisis conditions. And most importantly, all of that stacked together means that students lack the equitable access that they need to consistent great teaching in order to thrive. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with the research that shows that teachers are the most important school-based factor that drives student learning and growth. And so for students to be successful, they really need teachers who have significant energy and time to get to know them as individuals and academically, to be able to support and assess their learning needs and plan instruction that is challenging, empowering, and engaging. And that they stay at their school over time to enable sustained ongoing relationships with students and their families over multiple years. And then finally, that they can have the cultural competency to really connect with individual students across lines of difference and across different cultural and family contexts. And so doing all of those things is really a tall order in the way that our schools and teaching roles are currently organized. And so making that possible really requires rethinking the fundamental structures that define the American teaching role. So if that current model of one teacher, one classroom doesn't work for where we are today and the needs of our students, what should we be striving for? We've laid out a vision for teaching that is all of these things on the left, that's dynamic, rewarding, collaborative, sustainable, and attractive to a diverse cadre of educators into the profession. And so you can see on the right what the kinds of things that looks like in practice: more flexibility in roles, higher compensation, a greater emphasis on teams, manageable workloads and schedules, and accessible on-ramps into the profession. And really, a dynamic and sustainable teaching role looks different at each stage of the career. And so how do we break out of the kind of current state that we're in, where the job and expectations for a teacher in their first year are exactly the same as a teacher who's been at it for 5, 10 plus years? And so instead, here's a continuum of what a dynamic and sustainable teaching role could look like, that starts at the front end with multiple pathways into the teaching profession that enable teaching candidates to get meaningful practice and not take on debt in order to enter the profession. That once they're there in the classroom, they're not just kind of thrown in solo, but experience what we call shelter and develop models. So sheltering by having a meaningfully different workload than teachers who are much more experienced, and develop supports such as frequent cycles of observation and coaching and co-planning. And then for all teachers, we've created a job that has a sustainable workload, competitive compensation, and professional learning that is job embedded and growth oriented. And that over time, teachers have a variety of leadership roles that they're able to move into that enable the most effective teachers to extend their reach and impact and really improve instruction in their buildings. And that all teachers are able to do this work in the context of expert-led teams of educators who really share the work of supporting their students. So how do districts actually operationalize that from where they are today? There are 5 factors that shape the total cost and structure of the teaching role. At a basic level, if I kind of take the perspective of a chief financial officer, the cost of my teaching staff would come down to just the 3 things that are on the left. So 1, how many students do you assign to each teacher? That's class and group sizes. How much of the day do they spend teaching? That's our schedule design. And how much do you pay them? Our compensation models. But in this default way that leaders often think about these levers, things like expanding course offerings for students or creating much more individualized attention is only possible by adding more staff and thus adding cost. Whereas if we think more creatively about all 5 of these levers, that opens the door for leaders to create much more dynamic and supported experiences for students and a more attractive, sustainable teaching job. So for example, by breaking the standard 1 classroom, 1 teacher model, districts may choose to increase class sizes in some areas in order to prioritize really significant reductions in high priority areas, like early literacy, like 9th grade. By breaking standard assumptions about where, when, and how learning happens, districts can expand learning experiences through curated out-of-school opportunities and online learning. Instead of lockstep pay schedules that are driven by teacher experience and earned credits alone, districts can design competitive compensation models aligned to roles and responsibilities that actually evolve over teachers' careers. And then by thinking more expansively about teacher teams, districts can create models where instructional responsibility is shared among expert-led teams of educators with differentiated roles. The typical ways that districts often approach changes to the structure of teaching don't actually meaningfully improve the job for any individual teacher and can be quite expensive. So for example, take across the board class size reduction, where we reduce class size for all teachers by 3 students. That's a pretty marginal impact on any individual classroom or teacher. And for that same size investment, district could make a much bigger investment in reducing class size in grades K and 1 from 20 to 15 and really support early grades at those critical stages of developing early literacy skills. At the same time, personalizing instruction for middle school students through providing 3 additional hours a week of small group instruction, and strengthen 9th grade supports in that critical transition year into high school by reducing teaching loads for 9th grade ELA and math teachers from 130 to 85. And in order to make that sustainable without new resources, a district could make that work by offsetting those investments with limited strategic class size increases, for example, in under-enrolled high school electives. And then you can see a similar example here for how a district might rethink the typical approach to across-the-board pay increases and instead think about much more targeted increases by accelerating pay in the first 3 to 5 years of a teacher's career when they are growing the most in their effectiveness and are also most likely to leave the profession. and incentivize long-term retention of the most effective teachers by creating leadership pathways that extend the reach of those teachers and come with significant compensation. So we like to say at ERS that you can do anything, but you can't do everything. It really comes down to the choices and the trade-offs that you're willing to make. So we're about to move into an interactive exercise called School Budget Hold'em, where in breakout groups, you will identify the set of investments and savings that best reimagines teaching as a team-based endeavor and makes the job of teaching more attractive and sustainable, and ensures that all teachers benefit from embedded on-the-job professional learning support. When you go into breakout groups, you'll see some info about your case study district. So imagine that you all are consultants to Azalea Public Schools. Azalea is a school district of roughly 75,000 students across 150 campuses. 85% of students qualify for free and reduced lunch, and their schools predominantly serve Black and Latinx communities. And although this district has a few schools that are consistently high performing, there are big growing academic needs among students who are non-proficient readers, challenges around chronic absenteeism, and longstanding gaps that have deepened since the pandemic. And then all of those student needs are situated in a teacher workforce challenge where a large proportion of this district's teachers are in their first 3 years and really new to teaching, and that many teachers who may start in high need schools over time transfer to lower need schools within the district, like further compounding those challenges for the students with some of the greatest learning needs. And so your breakout, in your breakout room, you'll see we'll give you a link to a spreadsheet that looks like this. And you'll select the breakout group that corresponds to your team. And in column D, you'll see a set of investment options. So for example, decrease class size for all teachers by 3 students, or raise average class sizes from 20 to 15 in grades K through 1. Sorry, reduce average class sizes. And along with that, you'll see an estimated budget impact. So what it would add on to your budget to invest in those strategies. And you'll select from the dropdown which strategies you want to select. And as you scroll down the page, you'll also see some opportunities to offset these investments with savings options. And as you go through, this cell at the top will tally your positive or negative budget impact. So your goal is to help Azalea Public Schools get to a financially sustainable position by getting the budget impact to 0. So with your breakout group, start by discussing what you think are the top priorities for Azalea Public Schools. Select the investment options that will best enable this district to reimagine the teaching job, and select the savings options that make that strategy affordable. And then finally, be prepared to share out the choices that you made and why. So we'll pop a link to the spreadsheet in the chat as well, but you will head there and then find the tab that corresponds with your breakout room. And then there are also a set of wildcard options where if something comes up in your discussion that wasn't an option on the table, feel free to add that yourself. And team, I think we're ready to send folks out. Welcome back, everyone. I'm just checking my screen to see if all of the breakout groups have made their way back. It looks like we're all back here. And Danielle, I no longer have access to move the slides. Can you advance one? Great, thank you. So just want to spend a couple of minutes here debriefing. So what what are you all taking away from this exercise? Would love to hear from a couple of folks. Feel free to come off mute or pop some reflections in the chat. What are you taking away about the kinds of investments that you were most excited about, and what you're seeing as potentially being possible, and what was difficult about this exercise?
All right, so I would definitely say what was difficult about it was the amount of time. I think my group, we really got involved into the exercise and enjoyed the back and forth and discussion of them. I think what I really liked about it was the suggestions were things that were meaningful. Like this really could actually impact our teachers as well as the students. I really appreciated the ones that were really focused on further developing the teachers, as well as providing more time for one-on-one sessions or small group sessions with the students, because in my work, I see that that is impactful. So that's
Yeah, I think there's something interesting about like the set of choices that are in here that are really about like kind of different supports for students that may not be the things that we gravitate towards when we think about like making teaching more sustainable or more manageable. But I think one of the things that we know that like kind of I think we want to be student centered and like keep that focus on what is important for kids, but also like teachers who feel like they're having an impact and like actually able to reach their students and supporting them to make growth, like will feel more self-efficacy and feel kind of more fulfilled in their roles. And so that is also a way of ensuring that we're kind of supporting teachers and making them feel like that job is doable.
I think I learned the value of people being involved in the process and not it being just an administrative decision or a district decision, but involving teachers and going through something like this so they can see how there's a give and take, and then that way the ultimate decision makers can see and hear how it really boots on the ground impacts, the day to day. So I thought that was important to not just picking what we're going to pick, but also involving people so that way we can kind of, get a better product. But then also for some reason, the budget and the percent, it reminded me of Hattie's work and effect size. And it kind of let me see, well, this will get us a 1.3 and this will get us a positive 0.1. So that helps me kind of put a number to the strategy as well to kind of keep me grounded, I guess. So.
Yeah, there's we definitely do this kind of exercise with like kind of lots of groups of stakeholders within a district, to your point of like that being a way of like building that shared understanding, because I think it's when you're, it's easy to say, to advocate for like, we think this thing is important, but like, how do you kind of have that conversation about like, what is it really going to take to prioritize this thing? What are we willing to give up if we really like hold this as a priority for our students? Great. I really appreciate all of the reflections and engagement from you all. In the interest of time, and ensuring that we get you all out on time, I'm going to move us ahead. Thanks. Yes, thanks, Alan. Keep the reflections coming in the chat. So if you're interested in going deeper than we did today, I encourage you to go to our website, erstrategies.org. This is just an illustration of some of the publications that we've put out related to reimagining the teaching job, that also include some illustrative case studies and some resources around teacher compensation as well. And the exercise that you just played today, feel free to keep using that spreadsheet or make a copy of it. But then we're also releasing a new version of that on our website this late at the end of the summer. So stay tuned for that. And then, Oh, sorry, I advanced too far. Just a quick plug. Education Resource Strategies is one of the steering organizations of the Coalition to Reimagine the Teaching Role, which is made up of over 30 organizations at this point that are all really focused on how do we rethink teaching and break away from that one classroom, one teacher model. And so you can go to this website to learn more and reach out if you're interested in kind of staying up to date or participating in that. And then Isha, am I turning it to you at this point? Jasmine,
Yes.
thanks.
All right, so we want to thank everyone for joining us, and we wanted to give you an opportunity to ask us any questions, and feel free to drop those questions in the chat, and we'll answer those questions for you.
Can I just ask it without typing? It may be faster.
Yes.
But I did have a question about the base payment. How do y'all determine what the base payment, the contracts, when we were talking about contracts earlier, and how you separate it out? How do y'all determine the base payment?
The base payments are typically at least 60% of the district's total budget. So that's how we determine how much the base payment would be, the total amount that will go towards the base payment, and the amount that's paid per student is based on the number of students that are participating in the instructional intervention. Did that answer your question?
Thank you.
So just gonna drop stuff off.
Any other questions? I see a question in the chat. How can OBC concept help schools and districts with teacher shortages, diversity, etc., via instructional interventions? Outcomes-based contracting really helps you to drive your resources to the students that need it the most. So like typically from my experience as a former district leader, I purchased things, resources, and provided it to all students. But what OBC helps you to do is really think about looking at your data, thinking about your district's goals and strategies that you want to achieve, and really thinking about, again, what students need those resources the most, and identifying those instructional interventions and driving those resources in that direction, helping you to save on some of those costs that you used to utilize those dollars for in the past. Any other questions? All right, we're going to advance the slide. All right, so feel free to visit our websites. Our websites are listed here. We'll drop those websites for you in the chat once more. Check us out. I know EAC wants to share their resources with you. So does OBC. We really want to make sure that you're aware of this shift in contract modeling that we're doing to support school districts, as well as what ERS is doing to support funding, to support strategies, to support our teachers. But before you go, if you would grab your cell phone, scan that QR code, and just give us some feedback. We want to make sure that we're meeting your needs, and so that we can continue to provide these webinars and resources for you. With that being said, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you in our next webinar.